Hello guys and welcome back to NHL News Recap. We got a lot in store today to talk about. First things first, with a big rejected trade between the Ottawa Senators and the Philadelphia Flyers, Mike Babcock being out as head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the fallout with Columbus that's about to happen. Big news on Christian Dvorak potentially being traded from the Montreal Canadiens, as well as big news with the Bruins, the Jets, and more. So make sure you watch till the end for all the trade rumors, all the news, and hit that subscribe button if you're new for more hockey content just like this, because you won't want to miss a thing. Now, the first situation I want to talk about, of course, is the big rejected trade we were talking about between the Flyers and the Ottawa Senators. And this one is fascinating because it involves one player that we've heard a lot about over the last month, with contract troubles and negotiations kind of just being on a complete holdout. Now, leading up to training camp, of course, all these RFAs that are unsigned are getting even more contentious. But Shane Pinto, the Ottawa Senators, is one of the biggest highlights of a player that really has not had a lot of traction in his new contract and seems to have some trade interest. Now, of course, when we look at Shane Pinto, he is an RFA, he's unsigned, but 22 years old as a centerman, and last year, in his first full rookie season, got 20 goals, 35 points in 82 games. A lot of interest has already come to Ottawa about Shane Pinto, about a Shane Pinto trade, and we've heard a lot of traction in that department. Now, from this segment on the Hockey Writers article talking about it, Shane Pinto talks ongoing. The Ottawa Senators are engaged in ongoing discussions with Shane Pinto, according to Pierre Dorian. Negotiations with RFA forward Shane Pinto are progressing. The Ottawa Sun's Bruce Gerich quoted Dorian when he tweeted, "We have all the necessary components in place, with a majority of our young core already under contract. We're currently focusing on finalizing his deal, and we're optimistic about having him out of training camp next week." Gerich pointed out that the Senators have limited salary cap space, and he believes they'll have to move out of contract to accommodate a new deal for Pinto. And then we have this part from another Hockey Writers article talking about it. Bruins and Flyers interested in Shane Pinto. According to Bruce Gerich's report in the Ottawa Sun, the Senators are facing the task of securing a contract for Pinto before the commencement of training camp this Thursday. General Manager Pierre Dorian had previously stated his commitment to doing so, but as time winds down, other teams are showing interest in a trade. Pinto has little leverage in a new deal, but there is the chance that Ottawa decides to move on if the offers are good enough. It is believed the Bruins and the Flyers have made inquiries about his agents and have both been told to talk to Dorian about Pinto's contract expectations. The belief is still the Senators will wait out Pinto and he'll eventually sign, given his more limited role in the team and how it hurts his status if he doesn't play. Now, with that, we now go on to Anthony DeMarco's new tweets talking about the connection between the Flyers and the Sens and a rejected trade between the two teams in a Shane Pinto deal. Now, Anthony DeMarco says this: "On the Pinto Philadelphia talk discussed in 32 Thoughts, the Flyers did make an offer. It would have seen Mateo Joseph come back along with Pinto as a salary dump. The ball is seemingly in Ottawa's court, and Philadelphia's kind of moved on. They aren't expecting back at this moment." He also goes on to say, "There have been some whispers that Ottawa's preference is still to sign Pinto, and they weren't a serious one, may have thought about trading him. Could this have been a leverage play by the Sens? Potentially, but Philadelphia did table an offer." So this is fascinating, and again, we knew that they were already shopping Joseph to try and get some cap relief so they could sign Pinto, but not to trade both Joseph and Pinto in a deal. That wasn't really discussed before, but now we know that that was an offer on the table that Philadelphia did want to make happen. Obviously, if they get both Joseph and Pinto, that'd be incredible for them, but it seems like Ottawa was kind of hesitant to make a trade happen in the first place, especially if it was to include Shane Pinto, and I doubt that Philadelphia had much that Ottawa really wanted. And with Ottawa, we already know their top six was pretty locked in, so I think a player going back in a Shane Pinto trade would have still been a bottom six player, which I think for the Sens wouldn't have really been their most enticing piece to add. I mean, they obviously would have liked maybe a player like Scott Laughton, or maybe they would have traded a little bit more for a Morgan Frost or something, but I doubt Philadelphia would want to do that either. So it seems like what Philadelphia wanted in Shane Pinto and Joseph wasn't going to work out for the Sens, and what the Sens wanted for Philadelphia wasn't going to work out either. Now, this doesn't mean that we won't see a trade in the future. We could see that if this still continues to stall, but at the same time, it still seems like the Sens will likely just have to bite the bullet eventually, probably trade a pick alongside Joseph to get rid of that contract and sign Pinto in the end to a shorter term deal. Now let's go on to our next news story here, covering the dumpster fire that is the Columbus Blue Jackets franchise right now. With all of the drama last week with Mike Babcock and the allegations that some of those younger players had on the Columbus Blue Jackets roster, we now got the confirmation over the weekend from Elliotte Friedman that Mike Babcock will resign as head coach of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And it was crazy to see all of this happening, but again, confirming time and time again that Mike Babcock would no longer longer be head coach of the Blue Jackets. It took until September 17th. He didn't even last one day in training camp. Training camp hasn't even started, and Mike Babcock is already out in Columbus. Now, the Blue Jackets announced that Pascal Vincent would be the head coach to replace Mike Babcock's position immediately, and he would also be given a contract extension. And coming from Chris Johnston, this is the statement from Mike Babcock as he steps down as Columbus head coach. Upon reflection, it has become clear that continuing as head coach of the Blue Jackets was going to be too much of a distraction. While I'm disappointed to not have had the opportunity to continue the work we've begun, I know it's in the best interest of the organization for me to step away at this time. I wish everyone in the organization well in this upcoming season. Now, after the fact, Friedman released a new article breaking down a lot of the situation, and this was a really important part of things where he said this. According to multiple sources, one of the most serious concerns was a meeting that occurred away from team facilities that included several minutes of looking through a phone. That was beyond the scope of what was initially understood to have occurred. And again, initially it was a lot of Mike Babcock asking for a look into a phone, asking for family pictures, but this seems like he was looking through the phone, looking through the camera, looking through everything, and that probably rubbed a lot of players the wrong way. And then we got a couple of tweets here from Aaron Porcelain of The Athletic from Jarmo Kekäläinen's press conference after the fact, and from Aaron Porcelain, CBG president of hockey operations, on the hiring of resigned coach Mike Babcock. We got it wrong, and that's on us. And then he said this, Columbus GM Jarmo Kekäläinen said he apologized to the team this morning for hiring Mike Babcock. And it's just crazy to think that all of this has come down, and now, of course, Jarmo Kekäläinen is pretty much on the hot seat. We see this from some of the other statements by Columbus and the ownership and everything, that this was a huge mistake. This is something that won't happen again, and Jarmo Kekäläinen is getting a lot of heat for that. John Davidson is getting a lot of the heat for this, as they should. Right now, they're on some thin ice, especially considering how bad Columbus was last year. Things in Ohio aren't working out too well right now. Now let's touch on a few other big points around the NHL right now, a few other big stories. This next one is fascinating, involving the Colorado Avalanche and some potential goalie trades. From this part of the Hockey Writers, they said this: Avalanche might need a goalie and could make a trade. According to Frank Severly of Daily Faceoff, the Colorado Avalanche are actively considering trade options as they look for a potential replacement for Pavel Francouz. The 33-year-old backup goaltender is anticipated to be sidelined for training camp and the beginning of the season due to recovery from off-season abductor surgery. Severly noted Avs appear to be examining options on the goalie market. Sounds like Francouz is not completely recovered from his off-season abductor surgery, and there is concern he will miss some time. Francouz made just 16 starts for the Avalanche last season. Then, in this article, it goes on to say Casey DeSmith is a prominent candidate for a trade out of Montreal, and the Canadiens have said they would be open to moving him. DeSmith was recently acquired in a trade from the Pittsburgh Penguins, one that involved the Canadiens, Penguins, and the Sharks, and saw Erik Karlsson heading to the Penguins. And from what we saw a few days back when this was a release, when this whole rumor was released, a lot of talk was about Casey DeSmith, some about even Jake Allen in Montreal. So it looks like we could see a potential Montreal and Avs goalie trade, which always works just swell for the Habs. Now, here's the thing. The Habs could absolutely be a team to make this happen, but I would not be surprised if the Calgary Flames go calling to Colorado. Even though they might be competition in the Western Conference, I could see the Flames maybe trading Dan Vladar to the Habs and having a chance to bring up Dustin Wolf full-time into the NHL in a backup role or a fringe role. To me, if I'm Calgary, this is an opportunity to strike the iron while it's hot. We'll see if Calgary does. They usually aren't able to do that, but they're in need of a goaltender right now, Colorado, and a lot of teams right now could take advantage. Now, speaking of Calgary, let's go on to this part from the Hockey Writers saying something has to give with the Flames and Elias Lindholm. Lindholm spoke with the media this week, and it was clear he was frustrated with questions about his contract status with the Flames and why a deal wasn't done yet. He said he was willing to stay and has let the organization know where he stands. He's not waiting it out like Noah Hannafin or Mikael Backlund. And then Julian McKenzie writes, if Wednesday's press availability was any indication, something is going to have to give when it comes to Lindholm. His camp seems to be standing firm on the 2024 unrestricted free agents asking price of an extension, and he probably would have liked for a new deal to have been resolved sooner. If it gets to a point where both sides can't come to an agreement, Flames general manager Craig Conroy can't let the situation linger. So it seems like things are getting even more climactic with Lindholm, and because a deal hasn't been struck before this season yet, it seems like a lot of tension between the two camps. With Lindholm especially, it seems like out of the three of him, Hannafin and Backlund, he's the one that kind of wants to stay the most, but because of his profile, it's harder because of the cap cap and the term that you have to give up for Lindholm contract. So it seems like both points are kind of at a stalemate right now, and especially with the season lingering, it's going to get pretty crazy here. Now let's go into some more Montreal Canadiens trade rumors here involving potentially Christian Dvorak. As per Arpon Basu of The Athletic, Dvorak has the skill set to make him the Canadiens' most likely trade candidate this season. Even though he's got an extra year in his deal, Basu says the forward could generate plenty of interest this season and ahead of the NHL trade deadline. As a 200-foot center who can win faceoffs and play on both special teams, Dvorak would have good value on the trade market and could really help a contender as a very good third-line center. With another year left in his contract and a number that is not overly prohibitive, Dvorak is in a sweet spot of a good player who should draw interest on the trade market and is also likely not part of the plan in Montreal moving forward. But he will only be moved if the return is appealing to the Canadiens. Important to note, Dvorak's contract carries a modified no-trade clause that will allow Dvorak to submit an 8-team no-trade list should Montreal want to move him. So a lot of interesting talk there on Christian Dvorak. We've heard a lot of rumors just this offseason on Dvorak in general. The Dvorak experiment in Montreal has been an absolute failure up to this point, and he's kind of regressed to, I guess, the lowest ceiling that was possible for him in the trade with Montreal. But still, he's a valuable player if that contract fits for certain teams. And again, the general play that he provides, the face-off ability and some of the special teams will be valuable. It's just a matter of how valuable for Montreal to get rid of him at this point. To me, one team that can make a lot of sense if the Habs are willing to trade within the division is the Boston Bruins. If maybe Morgan Geekie doesn't quite work as a center this next year for Boston, maybe he's more of a winger, maybe they go after Dvorak and make him the third line center behind Zacha and Coyle. I could absolutely see a situation like that. And for Boston, getting a third line center, I don't think it would cost too much, especially because of the term on Dvorak's contract. It wouldn't be a pure rental, which I think in some cases might actually make them have to give up less value. But I think for Boston, in a situation like that, if they're looking for a general center this trade deadline, I think it could really fit. And even though Boston's prospect pool isn't great, they still have a couple options that I think Montreal will be interested in. But honestly, I think the Habs even getting like a second or a third at this point for Dvorak would be amazing. You take that any day of the week. Now, another part of this article that intrigued me was this part about the Seattle Kraken. If the Kraken regress from last season, expect movement. If the Kraken don't have the same kind of success they saw in 2023, Ron Francis could be one of the busier GMs in the NHL, suggests Thomas Drance of The Athletic. There are 3 notable unrestricted free agents whose contracts are set to expire: Justin Schultz, Wenberg, and Jordan Eberle. It's plausible that one or even all 3 of these players could become prominent names in the lead up to the NHL trade deadline. Durant suggests that Schultz might be the most coveted of the 3 of his profile as a right-handed puck-moving defenseman with Stanley Cup winning experience. He attempts to play better in the playoffs, which contending teams will like. So interesting notes there. And again, this is a big what if because I still think Seattle will be strong next year, but maybe not as strong as what was seen back last season. But still at the same time, Seattle does have a lot of options, a lot of flexibility. That's how they built their team up to this point. And if that happens, I wouldn't be surprised if there is movement. More likely, though, especially names like Alexander Wenberg, I could see coming, and maybe they bring up a player like Shane Wright towards the end of the season to fill some of those center roles. Then we get some signing news here right before training camp opens, this time with the Minnesota Wild. They've signed Jujhar Khaira to a 1-year contract. 6'4" centerman, 29 years old, and last year with Chicago got 14 points, 51 games. As a depth player, a guy who can play on the penalty kill, really interesting, versatile guy, and I've liked him for a long time, and it's good to see him get another deal in the NHL. It's two-way, so he can be in the AHL if he needs to, but some good center depth for Minnesota if they need to bring up a 4th-line center. That's gonna be it for NHL news recap. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and comment down below what did you guys think of the news and the trade rumors talked about today. What do you think happens with Shane Pinto? Do we see a trade happening there, as well as Christian Dvorak, the Colorado Avalanche? What happens next in Columbus land? Let us know all your thoughts down below. And of course, make sure you share the video with all the hockey fans you guys know online. Get it out there and click on this card for all of my hockey news content right in one playlist. My name is Nathan. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.